Hey guys, welcome back to Home Theater Guru. So today we're going to be looking at Anthem and Arc Genesis. I'm going to show you how to get into your Anthem and set it up from scratch, and then we're going to work with Arc Genesis and we're going to really tweak this system to make it sound fantastic. I do have a partnership with Audio Advice, and you guys might not know it, but if you purchase an Anthem from them, they actually will tweak your file for you. So you can send your file to them. They'll do the things that we're doing in this video. They will do that to your file and send it back to you. And their customer service is outstanding. If you would just give them your business and use my affiliate links, it would be greatly appreciated, guys. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do, because you've made the great decision and bought an Anthem, so first, congratulations on that. So first we need to get it set up on Wi-Fi so we can talk to it, upload our ARC files, and just get into the processor receiver. So with an Apple device, just your phone, you can use AirPlay to do it. Or if you have an Android, you can use Google Home. So once you get that set up, it's real easy to set up. You're good to go. It's connected. All right. So the next thing we're going to do after that is we're going to log into it. So I've already got mine saved right here where it says Anthem AVM 70. But if you go to your screen, your display, you actually walk up to your receiver or processor, you're going to hit menu. Okay. You're going to grab the dial and you're going to go all the way down till you see network and control. You're going to press select. And right there, the first thing you see is the IP. Network status is going to give you an IP address. Simply type that address, those numbers, with the periods. Make sure you get those two. Type that into your web bar, like for Google or whatever, Internet Explorer, and that's going to log you directly into the Anthem. That's what we're looking at right here. Okay, so we are on the main zone tab right here, and as you see, we can power the Anthem on and off. So I just turned it off. Everything went gray because it's no longer talking to it. Let's turn it back on. Okay. You have a second zone here on the AVM 70. So for zone 2, we can power zone 2 on and off and adjust our volume or whatever from here. You can also do that from your remote. So let's go ahead to general setup here. Now I'm only using a main zone. I don't have a zone 2 in here. This is just my theater. Now you can call it whatever you want. See, I've called mine theater. Hit apply and you've just named your Anthem. So if you're on Google Home or whatever, that's what it'll show up as. You can set your language. You can have your distance units in feet or meters. Master volume scale. I think everybody uses dB. All right. So I have mine set to turn off 20 minutes. If I don't have a signal going into the Anthem, it's going to turn itself off. And you can have it set to the display to show only volume or everything. All will tell you like what it's getting audio wise and also what input it's on. You'll see that as well. And if it's like Dolby Atmos, you'll see that, or if it's whatever it is, you'll see it on the screen. Okay, now this is for your on-screen display. Some processors don't have it. Thankfully we have it here. So if you change the volume, you're going to be able to see it on your your projector, your TV screen. So if you've got a 16:9, you're going to select that. If you have a 241 or scope, you're going to select that. And on-screen info, you can turn it off, and then you see nothing on your TV screen, or you can have it to the main zone only or both. I'm only using one zone, so it doesn't really matter. I just left it at default for both. So right here on the main zone, you can set up how loud it's going to be when you power it up. I've got mine set for -35. You can set yours where you want. You just may not want it blaring. I wouldn't set it to -10 or -15 dB because that's pretty loud. May scare someone when they turn it on. Maximum volume, I have mine at -10 because I do not want anyone to come in here and abuse the system. And honestly, I never go above that. So for me, that's perfectly fine. But you can do that, set it however you want. Now the input, whatever the input was on last time, this sets it for that input, or you can make it fire up on any input you wish. So I've also used a Harmony remote in this room, so it's going to set the input for me. Okay, zone 2 we're not using, but pretty much the same stuff. Mute controls, you can mute it a certain amount of dB below whatever it's at, or you can just make it go silent. Here we've got it just set for silent. So now let's check out the speakers. Okay, so from right here, you see we have profiles. This is actually profile 1. I've just named it theater, so you can come in here and you can call it whatever you want. We can put it back to profile 1 if we want. Now the profiles can be set up as different listening positions. So say you have two rows of seating. You could have a profile for front row seating and another profile for back row seating. Now when we get into ARC, we can actually run room correction from both of those positions, and it'll run it for A and B. So A could be set for the front row, B could be set for the back row, and it's going to be a complete separate set of measurements for each row, and it's going to apply them to these different profiles. Now you could also have a 2-channel, like say we went to profile 2, and we want it to just be 2-channel. We would just turn all these off. And okay. And you have to at least have mains, so mains are activated right there. Now if we didn't have a sub, put none, and now it's just like a 2-channel if you had some full range towers, and that's what you wanted your profile 2 to be. Now if you have profile 1, here we have it set as theater, but if profile 1 was front row, profile 2 was back row, you're going to use all the speakers for both profiles, but the difference will be in ARC, you're going to measure from 2 different listening positions. So that's going to be the difference, and you'll set it to whatever profile, wherever you're sitting. So that's pretty simple. As you see right here, we have 4 profiles, which is pretty cool. All right, so down here we've got our distances. Now ARC is going to set this for you. It's already done the works in this room, so everything's already set up. Levels, whenever we're setting our levels for our room after we run ARC, we're going to verify that our system is level matched. And there's a really cool tool in here. You do not need any external mics, or you need the ARC mic, the one that comes with it, but you don't need anything else. You don't need Room EQ Wizard. It's extremely accurate, and we're going to use ARC's tool to level match our system and make sure everything is perfectly level matched. We're also going to do some tweaks to a few channels that I recommend, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So then we've got inputs. So you see here I've got 3 inputs. You go over here and I'm going to edit it. You can call it whatever you want, apply it, tell it what video input, with the input on the back of your receiver processor, which one it is. How's it getting audio? And here we're getting it through HDMI, so you can have it through coax or anything else, but here we're telling it the audio is piggybacking along with the video in HDMI 3. So here for speaker profile, we just talked about profile, so say we had a 2-channel profile. So we could select profile 2. Remember, theater is the one that we use all the time in this room. It's the full-blown system, but if we had a 2-channel profile with just 2 mains, we could set it for profile 2. And this could be a CD player maybe, or something like that, and that would be our 2-channel listening. As soon as we turn to that input, it would automatically switch to that profile. So that's pretty neat. Okay, now right here we're going to tell it what to do when we get different input. And this is just going to make it play out of all channels, but you can select it to stay mono, whatever channel it's in, that's what it's going to stay at. But we're just going to have all. Now this one right here, mode preset for stereo source. So this actually sounds really good. Anthem, Logic Cinema. But you can set it for any of these. Anthem, Logic Cinema actually does a fantastic job. Okay, multi-channel. So what exactly does this do? Well, here we've got it set for Dolby Surround. So what's going to happen is if something is in Atmos, it's going to play it in Atmos. If it is in, so we could play Virtual X, but if your system is properly placed, like if you laid your Atmos speakers out similar to the studio and they're not too far, too close to the mains and the bed layer where they're collapsing, if you got plenty of separation, Dolby Surround is going to sound fantastic no matter what you throw at it. Now, if you have more of a height system, Atmos is not going to sound that great, but that's not the system's fault, that's a layout issue. So if you've got a nicely set up Atmos system, Dolby Surround is going to be the way to go. So if it's not in Atmos, if it's 5.1 or 7.1, DSU, Dolby Surround Upmixer, is going to upmix it for you. And it's going to upmix it up to a 9.1.6, which is what this processor here does. And it also does wides, and I will say it does a fantastic job with wides. So even 5.1 sounds amazing. I just leave it on Dolby Surround all the time because no matter what I throw at it, it does just a ridiculously fantastic job and sounds amazing. So that's where I'm going to leave mine. Again, you can play around with it. You may have a system that's better laid out for one of the other, like DTSX or Neural X or Virtual X. Now here we can tell it, remember we are on input, so we can tell it we want this input, again where are we at, 4K player, to use Anthem room correction. If we turn it off, it's not going to use it when we go to that input. We want to use our room correction. Dolby audio post-processing. This is something we've seen for decades on receivers. You know, they've had movie mode or stadium mode. That's all this is. It's just a DSP put on top. So just play around with this and see what you like. You can have none, which will keep it just as is. Movie, music, or night. You know, of course, night is going to compress it. So I would be careful with night mode. It's going to chop the bottom and the top off. It may not chop the top off. I haven't actually measured it. I don't use that, but it's probably definitely going to chop the bottom off because at night, you know, you're not want to wake up the neighbors or whoever's sleeping. Of course, here we have lip sync, so that's kind of self-explanatory. I've not had any issues. Input trim, and that's if you have an input that's a little low, you can adjust it here. Rumble filter. Now this is going to be on the bottom end, so you can adjust where the filter is. This is just going to kind of cut the bottom off. Some people don't like it to go real low. Personally, below 15 hertz, I think it adds too much room distortion. The frequencies are so low, it beats the room up and it kind of pulls you out of the contents. This is something we can do in ARC to a degree, so just something to be aware of that this tool is here. So if your bass is a little bit too much on the bottom end, you can come in there and just adjust it for 10, 12, 15, and just give it a listen and see what you think. So in the network tab, we've got some options here at the bottom for the triggers, maybe something you want to play around with and tell it what you want to do trigger-wise. Right now, it's just set up whenever the processor turns on, it turns on my amps. All right, down here, you can't really see it on my screen for some reason, but store, load, and update. There we go. All right, so here, firmware update. You want to make sure this is on, okay? This is going to make sure that it stays up to date. Now, this is the beta updates is kind of, you may or may not want to do that. You're going to be kind of a guinea pig, but the cool thing is, like we had an update not too long ago, or I don't know, several months ago actually, that finally allowed Anthem or ARC to phase align all of your speakers. That was a huge update everyone was waiting for. If you had beta updates, you got it before everyone else. So that's just something to think about, but you may get some bugs on some of these updates. So if you want to play it safe, keep this off. And of course, you can check for updates right there. Now, you've got all your inputs and everything that you just saved, you know, and called different zones set up and all that mess and profiles. If you want to save all that stuff, you simply export. And as you see, it just exported and it actually went into my downloads folder, so you can go in there and save that, call it whatever you want. You know, if something ever happens and you've got to send your Anthem in for service, when you get it back, if it's been wiped clean or if you accidentally wipe it clean or need to for some reason, you just load that file up and all your inputs and everything we just looked at is going to be there. All right, so now we need to get Arc Genesis, so just type that into your web browser, do a search on it. It's going to bring you here to Anthem's webpage. Scroll down and select your weapon. Whatever device you're using, go ahead and select it. So we're going to download Arc Genesis. Once that's loaded up, we're going to open it. Here it's going to tell you about some of the most recent updates and, you know, the fixes that things they fixed. Down here in the bottom, it's going to show you the last few files. And, you know, if you've had this existing, if you've never used it before, this down here is going to be blank. Okay, we've got quick measure. We're going to get into that in a little while. That is freaking awesome and something that no one else really has. Okay, so here we're going to select our units, Imperial. So here we're going to select our speakers. If you have in ceilings or if you have Atmos that are properly placed and you follow the angles, and I don't mean in line with the mains, you actually know what angles they're placed at, you're going to get the best sound using the front in ceiling and back in ceiling. I don't care if they're bookshelves. In this room, they're actually bookshelves. It's the placement that matters. And if they are placed correctly, you want front in ceiling, back in ceiling. Of course, if you have top mid, then go ahead and select that. The top mid would actually go in height 2, and your top rear would be your back in ceilings would be height 3. Okay, so now we've got measurement A. If you look down here, we've also got some other measurements we can do. We've got measurement B and measurement C. And we've got measurement D. That's 4. Remember, we have up to 4 profiles. So every profile we can do different measurements on. Let's go to profile B and let's turn that on. So that's going to give us another set of measurements. Remember, profile 1 or measurement A is our main profile. That's going to be, in this room, the main listening area or the main listening setup for movies. Okay, profile B or measurement B back here, that's going to be the second profile. Maybe that one's a back row listening position. So maybe we're going to use all these speakers, but the mic is going to be based on another row, not the front row. We would leave all the speakers as they are. Now, if it was a 2-channel profile, we would go and we would uncheck all the speakers and just have nothing but fronts. All right, so now we've got a 2-channel listening setup with a sub. That's if we had 2 profiles, which we don't. So notice the subs in the corner. That's just for show. It's just saying, hey, we got 1 sub. Your sub may or may not be in the front corner. We do need to do just a little bit of work. We need to go and measure the distance from the front left main to our ear position at the center of the listening area. So that's going to be right here dead in the middle. Now, if you have 2 seats that flank that, you're generally still going to use that spot right in the middle. Now, if it's all about you, and there's nothing wrong with it being all about you, if you want it to be just about one specific spot, maybe you sit in the middle or maybe you sit just slightly left of the middle, you can measure to that, and that can be your main listening position where everything falls on that one single point. There's nothing wrong with it being based on your spot. Now right here we can select how many different places in the room we want to measure from. You can select all the way up to 10. I would do anywhere between 5 and 8 will be fine. Down here at the bottom, you'll select how many subs you've got. And after that, you're going to hit continue. All right, no microphone found. This is kind of common with Windows, especially like if you have an update. There's a fix for it, but the updates will mess up your fix. You'll have to go back and do it. It's very easy to do. When this first happened to me, I jumped on YouTube and found a video from Barrett from Spec of Tech. Everyone say thank you to Barrett, first of all, because it's very simple, but if you don't know how to find it, it's not so simple and it'll drive you nuts. So search for Device Manager. There we go. And you're going to go down to Sound, Video, and Game Controllers. And you're looking for the one that ends in USB audio right here. Right-click on it, Disable Device. There you go. Now it's going to find your mic. Okay, so now it's time to start measuring. So position 1 is going to be pretty much where you see it on the screen, the center of the listening area, the center of the room. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to set the mic there at ear level where the seated head or seated ear is going to be. Make sure it's not blocked by any furniture or seat backs or anything like that. Now, as you look at the bottom, you'll see down there, ARC is ready to measure relative delays. And it's going to use the left main as a timing reference. So it's going to play left main, then it's going to play right main, left main, center, left main, wide, left main surround. It's using that left main as a timing reference, and this is pretty fantastic, and this is something ARC couldn't do for a very long time, and everyone was waiting for it to do it because Dirac could do it. Now ARC and Dirac both do it. It's kind of brought ARC up to a level playing field, and ARC also has some things that Dirac doesn't, which we're going to go over here in a little while. So now we're into position 2. Now at this point I'm measuring where I actually sit. I sit on the left of center. My wife sits on the right of center of the room. So, and this is actually going to be placing the mic at my ears, where my ears are going to be. We do not want to measure, for these at least right here, these first initial measurements, we want them to be where our ears are going to be. Now we're sampling the whole listening environment. We're trying to, ARC's trying to determine what is the room and what is not the room. The speakers should be accurate. The speakers are not going to actually measure like they do on the screen. This is an in-room measurement. Anytime you see someone post a measurement in room and it's perfectly flat, they have butchered that speaker to make it look like that, and it's not good, because it's similar to if you took your voice and you went into a room and ran one of these sweeps through your mouth, whoop, and it was on a graph, and someone said, oh no, we've got to fix all these wiggles that the room has caused, and then they go in and EQ them. They actually change your voice. Now the source is no longer accurate. We don't want to do that, so that's what we're doing here. It's why we're moving this mic around. We're sampling the environment. We're sampling, you know, the bubble right around where the heads are going to be. We don't want to go too far. Now, and if we use like a room mode calculator to place our subs, and you know, we have a good seat to seat response where we have a similar response for the sub for the bass at our listening positions, we may know that there's a null right in front of us, a foot back, a foot forward. We don't want to place our mic places that we know we've got issues, like right here where number 3's at. That's probably where our knees are at, or where our feet are when we recline. We don't want to be out there. We may know that there's a null right there. We do not want that part of our sampling, so we want to keep it where we know we don't have those modal issues, those subwoofer issues. So for this one, you know, I would go up maybe where you are when you're seated. You know, a while ago, the first two, you know, maybe when you're reclined. Now we're going to get like a seated ear position, maybe a foot, you know, in front of the reclined, you know, just kind of just understand where you're at. You don't want to go too wide. We're just getting a sample of the listening area, not the whole room itself. Okay, here we are, position 4. Again, behind us, we're never going to sit behind us, so I wouldn't go too far back, 6-8 inches maybe, just right behind the head. If you know, if you want to, if you know there's not a modal issue, if you know that there is a null a foot behind you, you're very cautious of getting too close to it. Smaller rooms, we're kind of threading the needle, placing the seated heads right where they've got to be, so just be careful about getting too far away. Now, if this was a large open area, like a large living room, and you're all over the place, you may want to kind of take that into consideration because your listening area is a little bit larger. You know, you can put the mic between the listening positions and that very center position if you want. You know, depending on how your room's set up, you're just sampling the listening area. Now, I do want to let you guys know when I plugged ARC's mic into my computer, it took over the mic that I was talking on. Didn't even think about it. I mean, it was a duh moment. So you couldn't hear me during my adjustments I made to my room. I did not, and I'd already saved the file once I fixed it or touched everything up. I saved it, so I didn't want to have to go back and measure my room again. So I just jumped on Facebook on Home Theater Guru's Facebook page, asked all the guys over there for one of their raw files from ARC, and that's what we're looking at right here. This is the first guy that said, "Hey, I've got one, I'll give you." So we're going to do his room, and then I'll send him this file when we're done. But let's go ahead and hit the review button. Now that black line is going to be the target all throughout these settings that we're going to be doing. It's always going to be the black line. All right, now here the red line, that is what the speaker measured. Or when we sampled the room, or when this guy sampled his room, this is what ARC came up with for the front left speaker, the center speaker, so the red line. Now ARC EQs by default up to 5,000 hertz, 5K right here. Okay, so now we're zoomed in. But so that green line's hugging that black line all the way to 5,000 hertz. And then look at his response. Now I measured with REW just to confirm. This is what it looks like. So you're losing all your top end from 5,000 hertz. It just starts taking a dump in. I mean, at 10K, we don't hear very well over 10K, but still, it's not going to sound good. And say he just got the speaker. He's demoing these new speakers in his room. He runs ARC. It doesn't sound good. These speakers don't have any highs. You know, something's missing in the upper end. All along, you know, these speakers may be great speakers. It doesn't mean it's this speaker. It's just the room correction needs to be done. It needs to be finished. By default, ARC, like most of the room corrections out there, you know, they're not optimal. We need to optimize our room correction and go in, just make some tweaks and adjustments that it's going to drastically change the sound in the room. So there's nothing wrong with ARC. We need to get in there and do some work. Center channel, I mean, look at that. It's huge. These are 10 dB blocks right here from, you know, this is 70, this is 80. Look over here. That's humongous. So the same thing as center channel, left wide, I mean, his whole room. Because ARC, look at that left surround. So his surround, the upper energy, the spatial cues as objects are moving around this room are just not going to sound good. Now we can't pick on this guy's room because this is extremely common. And the problem is because ARC only EQs to 5K. Now that's not an issue, only EQing to 5K. Sometimes you may not even want to EQ that high. Sometimes you may need to EQ all the way. We need to look at it. But then there's some adjustments we need to make to fix what's not being EQ'd, to bring the whole target in line so you have a nice transition all the way across so we don't have these big drop-offs. So that's what we're going to fix. So the first tab, set up speaker profiles. So we have profile 1. Now, if you remember before, we talked about different profiles. And so you can have a 2-channel profile. ARC has already measured all of the speakers from this position. Now, if you look right here, measurement A, that is the measurement. We took measurement A earlier. Now, if we wanted a measurement B, that would be measuring from a totally different area, like all the same speakers, but measured somewhere else, like in a second row or in a different main listening position, maybe on the same row, but maybe your position, like maybe you sit to the left of center or something like that. That would be measurement B, which we don't have a measurement B, so it doesn't give us, there's no option for it. ARC took measurements from one listening position or one listening bubble only because we told it to. All right, so we can call this profile whatever we want. Call it HTG for Home Theater Guru, so the guy knows when he uploads it, this is the profile that we're making here. But you can use these measurements from measurement A that were measured in this spot. You can set up another profile if you want. We can go down here to profile 2. We can turn it on, and there's all the speakers. ARC has already measured them. Okay, so we can go in here and call this one 2-channel. No, it won't let you type out the whole thing. You can't get the L in there, so 2-chan. So now we have 2 profiles set up. The HTG profile for the whole system, and we're going to do a 2-channel. So now we can go here to select speakers. Now this profile, HTG, we want everything, all the speakers to be played in that profile. Profile 2 over here is 2-channel. So we just simply toggle off the speakers that we don't want. And of course, fronts are required, so we can't turn those off. All right. So now there's a profile set up for 2-channel. All right, so now we hit continue and we can go ahead and start setting all that up. Now, we're not going to do a second profile because I just want to show you guys how to do it. It's really easy. Now, of course, if we had different measurements for that 2-channel setup, we would have selected a measurement B because we would have called those B whenever we took the ARC measurements. So you can not only select the speakers, but you can easily select what measurement, group of measurements that you want for that profile. Let's go ahead and turn the 2-channel profile back off because we don't want that. All right. And because we turned it off, now it has disappeared from this screen. Now we're going to go to adjust targets. We're going to skip this one right here. We'll come back to it in a little while. Okay, so the black line is our target. The one on the left right here, that's our subwoofers. The one on the right, that's our loudspeakers, the LCR, surrounds, everything not a subwoofer. So this is how we want them to measure in a room, or the target we want them to follow. This is basically the tonality of your speaker. And we're going to want all of them to kind of follow this response as close as possible so they all have a similar sound. We don't want some to have highs and others to have none because they're suck outs and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to be adjusting here. Okay, now room gain. Room gain, let's watch what it does. It's just moving the left. See the left side? It's basically turning the subs up and down like the whole channel. Now it's also going to affect the lower end of the loudspeaker response. So he's kind of lifting the whole thing up. So we're going to set this at about 2. Now this target is flat. Flat does not sound good. We have known this for decades and decades and decades that the human ear needs a house curve to sound natural, to sound good. Low frequencies, they don't lose as much energy as upper frequencies as they travel over distance. So we can't just have a flat response and it sound right. It just doesn't sound right. So we're going to have to adjust this target. Now there's been several studies through the decades, and one of the more recent ones is by Harman. So they did blind testing to come up with a target that sounds good. Now several other people have done this in the past. So again, nothing new, but their target actually, it just sounds good. So we're going to use the Harman target and we're going to mimic it. Now this may not be identical to the target, so if someone sees something, oh, you're half a dB off here, we're just mimicking the target. What we're going to do in here sounds really good, but you do need to tweak it. So we're going to talk about that, some of those tweaks here in just a second. Let's go ahead and adjust some more measurements. Room gain center frequency, we're going to lower that down to 150. And you can see what it's doing right here. When I raise it up, it's lifting this bottom end. I just find sometimes the lower vocals can get a little rough if you have that too high. Deep bass boost. Okay, while this one, the room gain kind of lifted the entire subregion. The deep bass boost is going to lift the bottom. Now this is really what you want to play with in your room. We're going to adjust this to about 4. Now you can have 2 rooms and you can have the exact same target that we're fixing to do here, and it can sound vastly different in both rooms. One room may have a long decay time where bass hangs around a long time. Another one may have a short decay time. Maybe it's got more room treatments, it's larger. For whatever reason, the bass acts differently in those 2 rooms. One could have subs better placed, have seats better placed. In other words, you can't blindly follow any target. You always have to listen. You have to go in your room, listen to it. If you feel like you need a little more bass, come in here and bump this up a little bit. You can also bump up the room gain. You can also bump up the sub trim, just the sub level in your room. You need to be happy with how it sounds in your room. Okay, deep boost center. Now watch this area right here. It's going to kind of shape that curve. See what it's doing? So I'm going to put it about 40 right here. Kind of get a slope up, then around 20 it kind of levels off. All right, so now our subs look pretty decent. We do have a problem because our mains still look kind of like crap. They're still way too flat. We've got a huge roll off past 10K, so we don't want that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fix that drop off in the upper frequency. So right here on the section for fronts, high frequency roll off. It's set pretty low. Now, ARC just kind of sets these all over the place, so you have to change it for every speaker. We're going to change it to about 8, 7.9. There we go. Now we need to tilt our target for the loudspeakers. So we're going to go over here to tilt level. We're going to drop it down. I'm going to drop it down about 4 dB. Okay. Now, if we go down just a little bit more, you can see tilt start frequency is 100 hertz. All right, so let's go ahead and start looking at our loudspeakers. We need to decide how much we're going to EQ and what we're not going to EQ. So first of all, the red right here, that is the speaker as it was measured. This purple, that is it rolling off to the subs. So this slope that we integrated right here, that we built just now, it's going to drop that speaker off like that for the subs. All right, so now we know what we're looking at. We've got our black line, that's our target. It's all over the place, but when it gets to about here, about 1500 hertz or so, levels off. It actually doesn't look that bad. It kind of follows our target. Then we drop down. See that little drop? So I hate EQing full band EQ. We talked about this earlier. It's like EQing your voice. It's not going to measure perfect in any room. So going in there, fixing all the little squeaks and all the little ups and downs, you're changing the source. Now we're assuming these speakers are accurate. But if this dip right here is actually the speaker itself, that is something that we might want to do full band EQ on. I normally would not do it if it wasn't for this. I mean, we would EQ maybe to 2K and we'd be done. So I hate to do it, but we're going to go ahead and do full EQ on this one speaker. And we'll keep on going. All right, so we moved it all the way to 20K, and this is where we adjust how high up we're going to EQ. All right, now here we have crossover frequency. Do not change that. ARC has gone in there and it measures your speakers, but it also, they understand that even if your speakers go low, I mean, this guy's speakers could have been crossed lower, but you really don't want them below 80 hertz because multiple subs give a similar seat-to-seat response. So you have the same bass. Everyone hears the same thing. Everyone can enjoy what they're watching. You're not going to hear something while your neighbor, the person sitting next to you, has a lack of bass when you just had slamming bass. That's what happens when you have one speaker playing a certain frequency. So if it's at 50 hertz, if you let the main play that 50 hertz, it's Russian roulette what it's going to sound like, seat to seat. With the multiple subs, if you've done it properly, set them up right, everyone's going to have great bass. So that's why we do want to hand off to our subs. Doesn't matter how big your drivers are in your mains and your other speakers. That's the reason we do that, is for quality of the bass and to get an even bass response at all the seats. So we're going to send bass to the subs. All right, so let's go on down. Okay, the center. And the center, actually, it looks really good. We've got to raise up our high frequency roll off. All right. I mean, the center does look good. It's just right around 11K. It just takes a dump. You know what? Let's go ahead and EQ this speaker to 2K. I would probably EQ it all the way, but I just want to show you guys what it's going to look like on the next screen. So we're going to do this to 2000 hertz. Only because if you look past there, I mean, it looks great. It's following our line. It's close. It's just right past 11K where we have that issue. All right, surrounds. This surround is not too bad. Let's go ahead and fix our roll off. Surround is really not that bad, so we're going to stop this one. We're going to fix all this mess up in here. We're going to do this one at 2K as well. All right, the wide, it's not horrible, but it's still got that nasty stuff going up top. I mean, that's 5 dB from there to there and then back. I mean, it's kind of a mess. But let's just go to 2K. Like I said, I mean, I just hate EQing all the way up. All right, now the backs, and this one right here, I mean, it's almost 10 dB the way it's coming down. This one, we're going to do full on this one. That is a lot of dip. Okay. Height number 1 doesn't look too bad. That's his top fronts. We're going to stop the EQ at about 5K is not too bad. We'll stop it at 5K for that one. Height number 2. Let's fix that roll off. There we go. It's not really that bad. We're going to go ahead and EQ this one 6K. And it's going to fix it to right around there. That'll pull that down a little bit. And everything to the right of it doesn't look too bad. Height number 3. This is his top rear. This one, that's a pretty hefty drop. It starts up here. We're going to do full on this one as well. Okay, so now on the subs. The first thing we want to do is understand what the LFE channel is, and that's our 0.1 whenever we're talking about 7.1, 0.4, 9.1, 0.6, that middle number, that is our subs. And it's always 0.1. Just because there's a 0.2 in there, that just means the receiver or the processor you're using has 2 outputs. Sometimes they can set delay between the outputs. Sometimes manufacturers just have an internal Y adapter and it just has 2 outputs and they'll call it 0.2 just for sales purposes. It's always 0.1. You have 100 subs, it's still a 0.1. It's one channel. So that LFE channel has content up to 120 hertz. So we want to make sure we have that to 120 hertz normally. So let's set that for 120. We can see our slope that we set on the first tab for our sub. It's already there. So low frequency extension, that we can adjust how far down the EQ is going to operate. Here we're going to go all the way down to 15. Low frequency extension, here it's set for flat. If you have sealed subs, you may like that. If you have a lot of output super low, say at 10 hertz and it doesn't roll off any, you may not like it because it's going to beat the snot out of the room and pull you out of whatever you're watching. Because when the room starts shaking, the doors rattling, I mean, yes, it's cool, but it's taking you out of the movie because now you realize the room is shaking. I mean, that may not be something you're into. I don't like it, so I like to roll them off. Doesn't matter what kind of subs are in the room, and I just like to shape the bottom end. Now, if you have a ported sub, you need to know what the tuning frequency is because let's say it's an SVS subwoofer tuned at 18 hertz. If you try to push that sub like this where it's flat, you're going to push it well below tuning, so port velocity is going to skyrocket. You're going to have a lot of chuffing issues. It's not going to have a clean output. It's not going to sound good. It's going to be rumbly. I mean, it's just going to be working its behind off. Now, if you set a filter, you protect that bottom end, and you're just going to have much better quality sound. So these are the slopes that we can set the bottom in. See here we have a third. That's a very gradual slope. When we go higher, it's going to be a little steeper. There we go. I'm going to set it for about a fifth. So that looks nice. Around 20 hertz, it gradually starts to drop off. So the other one, we need to mimic that because this guy's got 2 subs that he's using. Now, if you have a MiniDSP, we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Frequency, phase, don't touch any of that stuff. Don't touch distances on your speakers. When you do all that, you're actually taking your speakers and subs out of alignment. Subwoofers are never actual distance. So if the distance looks crazy, it looks too far away, too long, don't change it. It's right. It's a timing. It's distance and time, or how long it took for that impulse to get back to the mic. That's what it's measuring. Okay, so let's say you have a mini DSP. I have one in my room, and I show my AVR or my Anthem AVM 71 subwoofer. So the reason is because I want to be able to align them myself and make sure I have a good seat to seat. And I'll show you my seat to seat a little bit later on when we measure with quick measure and arc and show you how similar it is. Here we have one sub, and we got a subwoofer 2 down there. We don't really know what they're going to look like when they're combined, because when two subs play together, they influence each other, and the response is, they're working together. They create what's called a virtual sub in the room. So if you're using like a Behringer or a MiniDSP and you're measuring with Room EQ Wizard, and you want to set your house curve there, you can do it very easily. All you have to do is go right here to minimum correction frequency, and that's going to adjust. It's going to tell ARC, hey, do not EQ below 120 hertz. And if we want to go higher than that, we can just adjust it here all the way up to 250, and then this will allow you to push that slider all the way up to whatever frequency you selected there. But be aware, there's no reason to do that. If you've got a good seat to seat with your mini DSP and you measure correctly when you're measuring, taking your sample measurements in ARC, you can do your house curve here. You can sit in your living room, play around with ARC, adjust the house curve, upload it, listen to it, adjust it again, listen to it. Over and over, it's much, much easier to use. And in episode 7, where I walked you guys through using a mini DSP, I even told you if you're going to follow this with room correction, you need to EQ flat to give the room correction what it wants. You would not EQ a house curve in your mini DSP, you would EQ flat in your mini DSP, preparing it for ARC or Odyssey or whatever you're using for room correction. Okay, now one more thing on the subwoofers. Now you can do this in a mini DSP as well, but let's say you have a near field sub and it's annoying you because it's too audible. You got the subs gain matched, so they're both working equally as hard, but the closer sub is just, you can tell where it's at, it's localizable. Now the reason is because of the upper energy in that subwoofer. This area right up in here, the upper end of the subwoofer, is what we can hear. The lower we go, we can't really tell where that super low frequencies are coming from. So what we can do is, instead of turning that sub down, that's bothering us, which we don't really want to do that because then it's not helping down low where we really need that extra output help. We can simply go in here and change our high frequency extension. Now watch this area and watch what happens. Okay, let's change it from 120 to 90. Okay, you guys see that? So the upper end that was annoying, we just turned it down, but we didn't touch the other area, like the lower, from 50 hertz is still the same, 50 and down. So that's going to make that sub much, much less audible. Now this is a trick from learned from Valencia Seating. It's one of those things that you hear and you're like, duh, that makes perfect sense. It's just a great little hack, so thanks to him for sharing that. So let's go ahead and turn that back up to 120. All right, our targets are set. We've got our speakers EQing where we feel like we need to EQ, but not where we don't need to. So let's go ahead and move on to the next page. Now remember, we can always come back and adjust this. We can adjust for more bass if we want to. You can also adjust the bass at the subwoofer trim. Add a couple dB if you feel like you're missing some bass, you want a little more. Come in here and mess with the deep bass boost. Give yourself a little bit more house curve. Feel free to play around. There's nothing wrong with adjusting these targets a little bit. All right, so let's do a review and summary. Okay, now this is similar to what we saw whenever ARC got done with it initially. So we're kind of looking at the same thing. Now, of course, this front left, we did full EQ. So it hugs our line perfectly. We don't always want to do full EQ. Okay, our center channel, we've got a dip right here, which we already knew that was there. Now, I kind of wish we had less speakers that we had to do full EQ on here, but here's one. We stopped this one at 5K. Now, if you look, our response gets to about 5K, then it starts to kind of lift up. The center of those ups and downs really need to be following our target, and it kind of bumps up there. I'm going to show you guys how to fix it, but I think I can find one worse. There we go. All right, look at this height one right. Now, if you remember earlier, whenever we saw what ARC did, most of our speakers look like this. They had big, huge drops. Now, there's a very easy way to fix that. So we're going to go to height one right. Now, this is his top front right. So, I mean, it's not going to sound good. It's not going to sound anything like the other speakers. You look at his top front left right here, height one left. It looks much different. It's following the line pretty well. So this one's going to sound good, but this one's just not going to have, the highs are gone. The spatial cues are really going to be missing on that right top Atmos speaker. Now we can just look at it and kind of decide. So here we want to go up, and we need to go about 3 dB, call it 3.5. Set speaker level. Okay. All right, height 1 right. Now we do have a peak right there at 5K. This is still going to sound good. It's going to sound a lot better than it did for sure. But now if you look at the height 1 left, they're going to sound very similar. So I'd probably go and change this one as well. Knock that little hump down on both of them. Extend my EQ out to about 6 or 7K. Heck, let's do that. Okay, we just changed it to 7K. Go back and look at it. All right. Now that looks much better. We had that little bump right there. Now it's completely gone. So that's how you would basically go through all of your speakers, and you're going to do that. You're just going to verify that everything looks good. All right, guys, this little section is actually being edited into the video. So the video is going to be republished so I could add this because people were getting confused. Whenever we're doing this level adjustment, we are not level matching the speakers to each other. We are simply leveling the EQ'd section, like this right here is the EQ'd section, to the non-EQ'd section. That is all we're doing. We're going to go, at the end, we're going to use quick measure to align or to calibrate all of our speakers to reference, and they're all going to be outputting the same SPL or the same sound pressure level, or at least what we want them to be. That's where we're going to level match the speakers themselves. So if you look right here, this front right is being EQ'd all the way to 2K. Above it, it's not being EQ'd. And whereas the examples that we're using for this video, most of those, or they actually all had dips, this one has a rise. Now I told you they can have either, and that's the case here. So with this speaker, measured in quick measure, which is actually, if you measure with REW, it's pretty much going to be the same. I've compared them. It looks just like ARC predicted it would. That big hump is right there. This is a very fatiguing end result. It's fatiguing. It doesn't sound good. There's a big hump, you know, from 2K and up right here. It's not a very good sounding speaker, but it's not the speaker. With simply adjusting the level, and that's all we did right here. You can see the shape of the line. It's exactly the same. We just adjusted the level of the non-EQ'd section so that it's linear. It follows our target, and it's linear coming off of the EQ'd section, and look what we get. This looks pretty much just like our target right here. It sounds fantastic. Much, much better than it did right here, which didn't sound good at all. And that's all we're doing right here. We're just trying to accomplish a response that follows our target. Now, of course, we don't want to use full EQ unless we have to. ARC only has so many EQ filters. It's another thing I wanted to mention. So the less that we have to EQ, we have more filters available to the area that we are EQing. So that's another plus to not doing full EQ. Of course, sometimes, you know, you've got to do that. Now, the section on adjusting levels is so important. I'm going to do it here on a raw file. The same file we've been working on, but this one is back from the beginning when it was raw. And I want to show you, again, there's two different ways we can adjust our levels to get them back up to our target. There's going to be a slower way and a really fast way, but if you remember how drastic they were, how they were all dropping past the 5,000 hertz, they were all really bad. So just kind of keep this in mind, how all of these speakers look. Remember, ARC defaults to 5K, so they hugged the line, and they were just dropping like tanks. All of them. They all looked really, really bad. So just look at that. Look at the height. Height 1 right was horrible. They're all really bad. So what we can do is we can go to one. Let's go to this front left, first speaker, front left. If we need to go to our black line, that's our target. Now this target is not corrected, so it's not the target we want. This is like ARC's default target. We need to go up about 2 dB. Remember, these are 10 dB blocks, 70 dB, 80 dB. So we need to go up about, let's say, 2.5 dB. Now we're only worried about what ARC is not going to correct. ARC has already corrected all of this green line. See, this red line was the original. It's already going to fix that. If we were worried, if we'd EQ'd to 7K, we'd only be worried about 7K up. So we're only worried about the non-EQ'd section. So to get that non-EQ'd section, we need to go up about 2.5 dB. So watch this. Well, you've already seen this. We're going to do it again real quick. Okay, now let's go back and look at it. Okay, looks good. But there's a much faster way. So you can take your time doing that, or you can run through it really quick and then just do some small adjustments. Just go to it, hit speaker level. Okay, now remember, ARC is going to EQ from here back, from 5,000 and down. Now this is the default responses, so we're not able to see the corrections, so we need to kind of remember where our corrections are. This is default ARC, so it's 5,000, but if we had gone to 7K, we need to kind of remember that the center, we did 7K, so we're only worried about what's to the right. But on this one, it's going to be from here. We need to bring that up to the line. Let's go ahead and do that. So we want to kind of center everything up past 5K, kind of center all the little ups and downs kind of on our target. Now these have this dip. We don't want to, to center that everything would be up here, but then that's going to remain too high. So again, this is just to show you how to quickly run through here and get your level set. Front right, same thing. I'm just going to get this section right here up to our line, kind of center the wiggles. Left wide doesn't look too bad there. We're going to kind of center it right around there. Right wide, lift it up a little bit. Surround left. Okay. Surround right. It's almost like playing a video game. I'm trying to split the wiggles on the line. Now, what he had before, just doing this, it's going to be humongous, because before his responses were dropping off, no highs, all lows. I'm not going to say the rest, but anyway, 5,000 hertz right here. Let's go up a little bit more. Okay. So his system just doing this would sound vastly better, more linear. Of course, he has no house curve, so it's not going to sound great, but it would just, he would have the highs his system was really lacking when he got it directly off of ARC's room correction. Okay, this one's probably going to have a little hump right there. All right. Now, like this one right here, we're going to, 5K and everything is getting EQ'd. Remember, it's also going to pull down. Like, it's not going to create a brick wall right there and pull it down. It's also going to pull that hump down with it at 5K a little bit. So that hump's going to not be as bad as it looks right there. This one's still going to be ugly, but we're going to make it look as best we can. And remember, we also want all of our speakers to somewhat follow our target, so they kind of somewhat have a similar tonality. All right, let's check it out. All right, front left, of course, that one looks good. Front right, or that center. Center looks pretty good. We could bring it down a little bit, half a dB, maybe a dB. Front right is dead on. Now remember, 10K, past 10K, we don't hear as well. So even without fixing, doing full EQ, this would still sound good. He just needs, of course, a house curve. Flat's just not going to sound good. The left wide, which those were really bad. Now they're not too bad. Nothing to write home about, but the system would sound so much better just adjusting these levels. Now these are not level matching. We are not matching the system. That's going to be done in the next step. Back right, these would probably lower them a little bit. We're above our black line, so we would drop it down a few dB right there. Okay, we still have a hump right there. Now remember, that's how high it was, so it did pull it down quite a bit past 5K. And maybe drop that one down a little bit. Of course, we would actually EQ this one out to about 7K if we were doing our, actually going through the works and actually tuning the system. Height one right, that one looks much better too. Still not perfect. We need to EQ that one out a little further as well. But I just wanted to show you how much of a difference it makes by simply adjusting your levels and how important that is. Height one right, probably raise that one a little. Of course, we EQ it out a little further past than 5K. Now, I've never heard anyone ever talk about adjusting your levels to that black line. Most of the time, people just load it straight up. But you definitely want to do that. It makes a huge difference. Okay, before we upload this to the Anthem, we do need to launch the automatic phase adjustment. So hit this. It's going to walk you through it. It's very simple. You just put the mic in your main listening position, and it's going to phase align the subs to the mains. All right, so let's go ahead and upload it to our device. And after that, it's time to jump into Quick Measure, and we're going to look at all of our speaker levels and make sure everything is matched. Now we're going to go to the home page and launch Quick Measure. All right, so it's time to set our levels. We're going to start with the front left. And if you look over here at the bottom, it says 73.42. So we need to add a few dB because we want to get that to 75. We want all of our speakers, except for a few, as close to 75 as possible. I'm going to go back into our IP interface. So we're going to go to every speaker, and we're going to make sure they all reach 75 dB. Here we're doing the center channel. See, this one was 73. So we're going to go to our IP interface, and we're going to bump the center up just a little bit. Let's go ahead and measure it again. We want it as close to 75 as possible. Okay. Can't get much closer than that. Okay, our front right is 73, so we're going to raise that one about a dB and a half, 73.37. We're at 74, basically 0.8. I'm not going to get any closer than that, so we're going to go ahead and leave that one there. You cannot tell a quarter of a dB or 0.21 of a dB. Now again, I'm having to voice this over because my mic was not usable when I was doing these readings. So you're just going to go to every single channel, and you're going to make sure they're all around, or not really, as close as you can get them to 75 dB. And that's going to be calibrated for reference. It doesn't take very long at all to do this. You do want to let it get a few sweeps until your SPL level kind of stabilizes. You'll see it happen. It just takes about 2 or 3 little sweeps in the room for that to happen. Now notice your back, left, and right. I'm going to boost these a little bit. Now I use a test disc, Adobe Atmos test disc that has like a bunch of wind and stuff around the room, and that's kind of what I use to adjust the rears by ear. Your mic does not have like the back of earlobes like we do, and usually you have seat backs as well. I just find that it sounds a little bit better to boost those just a little bit. So we're going to raise these about 2 dB. So our target's going to be about 77, and we're going to test in room. That's just a good starting place that I found. Okay, it's a little hot, 77.77. I'm going to raise it down about a dB. All right, 76.7. That's perfect. Let's go ahead and do the back right. And we're going to do the same thing. Now you can also bump up your top rears because they are kind of behind this. You can bump those up maybe a dB. Don't go too much. And your center channel, for goodness sakes, do not bump your center channel up if you have a treated room. If you've got a treated room, you've already taken care, you should have taken care of the issues that make it hard to hear a center, that may force some people to boost their center channel. You want your entire system to be level matched. You want it to sound the same as objects move around the room. Don't boost your center channel. You should, if you have problems hearing your center, then you've got some acoustic issues in your room that really you should address. And just turning that center channel up turns up those issues as well. So that's not really the proper fix. Now, if that's what you got to do, that's what that's fine. Just not ideal. All right, we got 76.3 on our back right. We're going to bump it up half a dB. Perfect. All right. All right, guys, so after you've done that, you can play with this tool, move your mic around, kind of see, what's going on in the room. Don't get too stressed out about all these little squiggles. Remember, the speaker, we do not expect it to measure flat in room, so don't let that stress you out. Once you get to this point, you get everything level matched. It's time really just to kick back and go listen to your room, enjoy it. If you had some decisions to make about, should I do full band EQ? I had a little dip at 10K. Can I hear it when, maybe you don't EQ it and just listen and see if you have any suck outs, your upper energy's missing. You might want to go and do a full EQ, extend that EQ all the way to 20K maybe. We had that issue in the guy's file we looked at a few minutes ago. So you can tweak it. The bass is not quite heavy enough. You can turn it up. You can actually turn it up at your subwoofer if you want. Bass is kind of something we adjust to taste. And here I am back showing you the subwoofers. You can see right here my sub level was 74.56. I did boost that up a little bit. If you want a little more bass, you can also, come back to here and raise it up to 76. Go through your IP and just kind of boost it up a little bit. Just don't be afraid to play with the bass. All right, guys, so hopefully this video has helped you understand how to use ARC and how to use your Anthem and how to go in there and make changes and adjustments and get it sounding like you want it to sound. ARC is a fantastic room correction software in general. It's like you just have to learn how to use it. It's not that complicated once you get in there and get your feet wet. If you guys don't mind, give this video a like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when more videos come out. And that's going to be it for this one, guys. I'll see y'all for the next one.